Welcome back to CSS Breakdown, book by book season 4, where we're unpacking Will Durant's timeless reflections in Fallen Leaves. In episode 5, we explore one of Durant's most hopeful and poetic ideas that life, not death, is the ultimate victor. Our mission for this deep dive is to really get to grips with Durant's nuanced and, ultimately optimistic take on mortality. We're aiming to move beyond just the end of the individual, to really understand this enduring triumph of life itself. Like he lays it out in this amazing collection of his final thoughts.
It really is a fascinating pivot he makes. Fallen Leaves isn't, just another book. It's deeply philosophical, almost like his last words, you could say, from one of history's great synthesizers. It's a work that, even while looking squarely at mortality, gives these unique and, frankly, profound insights into experiences we all share. And today, we're focusing on how he first grapples with death, confronts it, but then, well, in a way only Durant could, he performs this profound pivot towards celebrating life's persistence. It's not just wishful thinking, it's a reasoned case.
Absolutely. And what a journey he takes you on. Because like you said, Durant isn't shy about the harsh reality of death. He puts it right out there, unflinchingly. But then he finds this astonishing counter-narrative, a real aha moment, That changes the whole picture. It's almost startling how optimistic it feels, especially considering where he starts from. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're talking about a shift from the certainty of individual ending to an even deeper certainty of collective triumph.
Precisely. He begins by facing the hardest truths first. It's almost like he needs to clear the decks,
Yeah.
Establish that baseline reality before he can build his argument for life's victory. It gives his eventual optimism a much stronger grounding because it fully acknowledges the very real, often painful human side of mortality.
Right. Let's get into that first part then. The inevitable shadow. And he starts with a real gut punch, doesn't he? He says, and I'm quoting here, "Only one thing is certain in history, and that is decadence. Only one thing is certain in life, and that is death."
Wow. I mean, when you
Yeah.
first read that, it feels almost, bleak, right? Like this heavy pronouncement of unavoidable decline. What's the immediate impact? How does this opening shot kind of prepare us?
Well, that statement, it doesn't just set a foundation. It anchors it solidly. It forces you, the reader, to confront these stark realities head on. And when Durant talks about decadence here, is historically speaking, he's not just talking about, say, moral decline. It's broader. It's this kind of inevitable winding down, a decay of power, of vibrancy, maybe even the forms of civilization itself, and individual energy, too. Remember, this is a historian who spent his life charting the rise and fall of civilizations. He saw this pattern again and again. Think Rome, for example. He wrote volumes on its complexities, including, well, its eventual decline. So it's recognizing that nothing really lasts forever in its current form. Not empires, not cultures, not our own bodies. He says he's looking back with inverted romantic eyes, seeing only the suffering of mankind. That's a really honest, maybe even painful look at the past, stripping away the rose-tinted glasses. It prepares us by just taking away any easy answers or false comforts right from the get-go.
And it really frames old age as this great tragedy, doesn't it? Where all you see is the suffering that's gone before. When one looks back, seeing only the suffering of mankind. That's a powerful way to put it, acknowledging the weight that comes with years and memory. And he also touches on this very human thing, praising life even as it's abandoning us, often driven by this hope we shall find it again, a fairer form in some realm of disembodied and deathless souls. That feels very natural, that reaction. Clinging to hope, wishing for something more, an afterlife. When you're facing the end, we instinctively look for a way around that finality.
Absolutely. That longing for continuity, for something beyond the physical end, it's universal. It cuts across cultures, across history. Durant's sharp enough to acknowledge that deep-seated desire. He's setting up a really key contrast, actually, between that traditional hope, personal resurrection, immortality, that fairer form, and his own quite unique proposition. His answer isn't rooted in a spiritual afterlife. It's grounded in something profoundly biological, evolutionary, almost inherent in existence itself. He's basically saying, yes, we hope for that, but what if there's another way, maybe even more fundamental way, that life carries on? This initial honesty is what gives his later argument so much power.
So hearing him start so bluntly, only one thing is certain in life, and that is death. How does that hit you? Is it comforting in a strange way to have it laid out so bare, or is it just unsettling?
For me, it was jarring at first, definitely. But knowing Durant, his huge historical view, I kind of trusted there was more coming. It's like he makes you face the darkness before he shows you a different kind of light. Not necessarily comfort, but maybe understanding? That's a great question to ask yourself as a listener, too. For a lot of people, that bluntness can be deeply unsettling. It confronts the fears we often try to push aside, no illusions left. But for others, there can be a kind of comfort in just stating the undeniable truth. It clears the space for a different kind of thinking. If death is the only certainty for me, the individual, then how do I find meaning within that certainty? That's the big question he's setting up, isn't it? And he's preparing to offer a radically different answer than many might expect, an answer that hinges on redefining what we even are.
Right. Okay, let's move into that. The paradoxical purpose. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because after that almost brutal honesty about death, Durant drops this question that just completely flips your perspective. And yet, what if it is for life's sake that we must die? That's such a radical idea, isn't it? So counterintuitive. It makes you stop dead. Wait, for life's sake, how? It takes what feels like a personal tragedy and frames it as, well, a necessary function.
It's a fundamental philosophical shift, absolutely. This is where Durant zooms out. He moves beyond the individual perspective, which is often consumed by, fear or grief about personal extinction, and he elevates it to a larger, almost cosmic, biological, evolutionary viewpoint. He's suggesting death isn't just an endpoint, an erasure, it's a necessary function, a vital part of life's bigger picture. It's a shift from seeing ourselves as these isolated units to recognizing our role within this vast ongoing process. This one question just opens up a whole new way of understanding existence, moving from egocentric to maybe biocentric.
And he explains it right away. He says, in truth, we are not individuals, and it is because we think ourselves such that death seems unforgivable. We are temporary organs of the race, cells in the body of life.
Wow. I mean, that sentence just flies in the face of pretty much everything Western culture drills into us about individual uniqueness, autonomy. How do you even start to unpack being temporary organs of the race? How did that change how we see ourselves? It absolutely challenges those deeply rooted Western ideas of individualism, where the self is, distinct, self-contained, the main event. Durant argues that this perception, this belief in our absolute separateness, is exactly why death feels so unforgivable. If we think our individual life is the be-all and end-all, then its end feels like the ultimate senseless tragedy. But if we are temporary organs or cells in this larger body of life, well, that implies this profound connection, a purpose that goes way beyond just our singular self. Our existence, in this view, isn't just for our own personal journey. It serves the continuation, the flourishing of the collective, the race, which you could read as humanity or maybe even life itself, all species. Think about your own body. Your liver cells, they're crucial, right? But they have a limited lifespan. They die, new ones replace them. Not because the individual cell failed, but because its death is actually necessary for the health of your whole body. In the same way, our personal stories are kind of part of this much grander, ongoing story of life. It's humbling, yeah, but maybe empowering too.
So if we're the cells in the body of life, what does that make the whole? Is it like a collective consciousness or a purpose that's bigger than any one person can grasp? It sounds almost like this huge biological organism where each cell does its job and then dies off, but the organism itself keeps going, constantly renewing.
That's a perfect analogy, and it's exactly what Durant seems to be getting at. The whole is life itself, this enduring, evolving, almost self-sustaining force. It's not necessarily conscious like a human is, but it acts like it has a purpose. Persistence, renewal, striving forward. Just like those cells in your body dying and being replaced keeps you healthy, individual lives ending allows the larger organism of life to keep thriving, adapting, renewing itself, allows for growth, for new forms, new ideas, for evolution. Without death, life would just stagnate. It would become rigid, stuck. It's a crucial part of the dynamic balance that lets life keep going.
Which leads right into his next point, doesn't it? Death as the engine of renewal and growth. He argues, we die and drop away that life may remain young and strong. If we were to live forever, growth would be stifled and youth would find no room on the earth. This feels like the logical next step from that cells in the body idea. If no one ever died, what would that world even look like? Overcrowding, sure, resource scarcity, but also, maybe worse, no new energy, no fresh perspectives. It feels really suffocating to imagine everyone living forever.
Exactly. Just imagine for a second a world where every human who ever lived was still around. The sheer numbers. Unthinkable. Resources gone. But beyond the logistics, Durant's point cuts deeper into the intellectual and cultural side. If new generations didn't come along to replace the old, you'd lose dynamism. drastically. New ideas, new art, scientific leaps, social change often, these bubble up from younger minds. Minds may be less burdened by the assumptions or the baggage of the past. Death, in this view, is a biological necessity, a kind of essential pruning, you might say, that allows for strong new growth. It makes sure that life, the whole system, stays vital, adaptable.
And he uses that incredibly sharp, almost, well, brutal analogy. Death-like style is the removal of rubbish and the circumcision of the superfluous. It's a really striking comparison. It sounds harsh. What does he mean by rubbish and superfluous there? It seems almost clinical.
It is sharp, and I think that's intentional. In the context of life's grand, long-term purpose, rubbish and superfluous don't refer to the value of an individual's life, not at all. It refers to anything that, from the perspective of life itself, is maybe no longer contributing to its forward momentum, its optimal functioning. I think of a plant shedding old leaves, right? Or dead branches. It does that to focus energy on new growth. Life as a whole sheds individual forms that have served their biological, their evolutionary purpose. It clears the stage for the next act, so to speak. It's a very Darwinian view, almost ruthlessly efficient. But Durant argues it's essential for constant evolution and adaptation. It's about ensuring life, in its entirety, stays vibrant, efficient, ready for whatever comes next. It's presented as a necessary sacrifice, really, for the greater good of the whole.
It's a very cold perspective in a way, seeing individuals as just components to be shed when their time is up. But okay, how does this biological necessity then lead back to a more hopeful view? Because right now it sounds pretty clinical, pretty detached. Where's the hope in that? Where's the meaning for us?
The hope emerges, I think, when you grasp that this cycle isn't just random destruction. It's driven by an inherent purpose, the continuation, and crucially, the improvement of life. The very fact that individuals drop away is what creates the space for the new, the young, the strong to emerge and carry life forward, often building on what came before, of course. This isn't just about survival. It's about this persistent striving, a fundamental will not just to exist, but to evolve, to progress. So the meaning for us as individuals comes from recognizing our indispensable part in this huge ongoing project. We're temporary, yes, but our contribution becomes part of life's permanent lineage. And this flows right into his next big idea, how this renewal actually happens in a way that's deeply personal for so many of us.
All right, let's talk about that. The immortal bridge, which is parentage, isn't it? If we're all just these temporary cells, how does this eternal life actually keep going? And his answer is just beautiful, so poetic and human. He writes, "We separate a portion of ourselves from the body that is aging and call it a child. Through our undiscourageable love, we pass our vitality on to this new form of us before the old form dies. Through parentage, we bridge the chasm of the generations and elude the enmity of death."
It's really stunning writing, isn't it? It's a perfect blend of scientific observation and poetic feeling. And that phrase, undiscourageable love, that's the absolute key. It's not just biology, not just a blind genetic drive. It's infused with deep emotion, with purpose, with this almost defiant will to overcome our own mortality. This love, he suggests, is the engine driving that generational transfer. Transfer of vitality, sure, but also knowledge, experience. It compels us to nurture, protect, invest in the next generation, making them, as he says, a new form of us. Hell, we don't achieve personal immortality, obviously, but our genes, our ideas, our life force gets carried forward. Parentage becomes life's ultimate strategy, you could say, to elude the enmity of death, to keep bridging that gap between generations, ensuring the river of life flows on.
So what does this mean? It's not just about having kids, is it? It's about the act of parenting being this profound, strategic, loving process that ensures life keeps going and makes having children feel, well, less like just a personal choice or a social thing, and more like this deep biological and philosophical imperative. Driven by love, yes, but almost like life itself built this drive into us.
It absolutely reframes it. It shifts parentage from being purely personal to being a critical function in life's grand design. Our individual lives end, sure, but through our children we extend our influence, our biological line, our cultural contributions, our vitality, really, beyond our own death. Love in this picture isn't just an emotion. It's the mechanism life uses to ensure its own persistence, its own evolution. It's the energy that helps us overcome the individual fear of ending by channeling it into the future. It turns our personal desires into fuel for universal continuity. It's a really optimistic take on having children, seeing it as an act of defiance against oblivion.
And he really hammers this point home with these incredibly vivid, almost shocking examples of life persisting amidst total chaos. He talks about children born Even in the flood or in the chaos of a car crowded with refugees, twins suddenly appear, or this image of a mother solitary in a tree and surrounded by raging waters nurses her babe.
Mhm.
Those images are so powerful. They just scream life's fundamental drive, its absolute refusal to give up, even when everything around is suffering, destruction, displacement. It's like life shouting, no matter what, I continue.
They are incredibly striking, designed, I think, to evoke the raw, untamable will of life itself. They show how even when individual lives are in terrible danger or lost in disaster, war, unimaginable hardship, the impulse to reproduce, to protect the young, to simply be, just overrides everything. It's a testament to life's resilience. It's almost stubborn insistence on going on. It's not about individuals beating the odds. It's about the collective force of life marching forward relentlessly. It's a powerful way to say, in the midst of death, life renews itself immortally. And it's not passive. It's active, ongoing, almost miraculous renewal, happening regardless of the tragedy around it. It shows how life's larger purpose just transcends immediate, awful circumstances.
Does looking at parentage this way as this strategic act of the race against death, does it change how you think about it? For me, it definitely elevates it from something deeply personal, which it still is, of course, but to something much bigger, almost like a sacred role in the whole scheme of things. It gives it a different kind of weight, moving beyond just personal desire to maybe a kind of collective responsibility.
It absolutely changes the perspective, I agree. It turns it from, a choice or a social norm into a fundamental expression of life's purpose, a key part of its enduring victory. It's a profound way to see our role in this vast continuum. It ties our individual lives directly to the survival and future thriving of the whole species. Suddenly, raising children isn't just about nurturing individuals. It's about contributing to life's eternal win. It suggests this shared, inherited purpose running through every generation. And this leads perfectly into his next point, how this persistence isn't just immediate, generation to generation, but works across vast stretches of time, connecting efforts that seem totally separate.
Right, the long game. Let's get into that. This brings us to the long game, doesn't it? Life's unyielding purpose across millennia. Durant says, if it is one test of philosophy to give life a meaning that shall conquer death, wisdom will show that corruption comes only to the part that life itself is deathless while we die. So real wisdom for Durant is seeing this bigger picture. The individual, the part, experiences decay and death, yes, but life itself is eternal, unbroken.
That's a really crucial distinction he makes, and a profound test for any philosophy. Can it offer meaning that holds up against the certainty of death? For Durant, a philosophy proves its worth, if it can do that. He's saying the corruption, the decay we see in a body, in a specific life form, even in a whole civilization that only applies to the specific finite parts. But the underlying force, life itself, which embodies that collective drive, the accumulated wisdom, the inherent will to continue that is deathless. It's almost a spiritual take on a biological fact. Our individual candle goes out, maybe, but the fire of life itself keeps burning, passed from torch to torch, never really dying. It implies this kind of collective memory or purpose held within existence itself.
And this is where his historian's perspective really comes into play. He uses this amazing extended example, the story of Icarus and flight. He starts with the individual tragedy. 3,000 years ago, a man thought that man might fly, and so he built himself wings, and Icarus, his son, trusting them and trying to fly, fell into the sea. Classic story of human ambition and immediate heartbreaking failure. Shows individual limits perfectly.
Yes, exactly. And that individual tragedy, Icarus falling, is precisely the setup Durant needs to highlight life's relentless drive. The dream itself wasn't defeated. Undaunted, life carried on the dream, he writes. It's not about the folly of one person's try. It's about life's unwavering commitment to a goal that outlasts any single person's life or failure. The individual falls, the project fails, but the aspiration, the fundamental desire for flight, it stays alive in the collective. Well, the collective spirit of life. It's an example of how individual effort, even when it ends badly for the individual, still adds to this larger enduring story. That's part of the accumulated wisdom he's talking about, passed down.
And then he jumps forward, 30 generations, to Leonardo da Vinci. He calls him spirit made flesh. Lovely phrase, scratching out these incredible plans for flying machines. And he highlights that amazing note Leonardo left. There shall be wings. Just rings with hope, doesn't it? But of course, Leonardo also failed and died, but life carried on the dream. It's so poignant. You feel Leonardo's genius, his intense longing, his work. But then the reality of his own mortality hits. Even the greatest minds are temporary.
It's the perfect illustration of the point. Leonardo, this giant of human intellect and creativity, throws himself into this dream. Yet he too is bound by his own lifespan, by the limits of the technology of his time. But his failure isn't the end of the story for Flight. It's just passing the baton. His notes, his drawings, his ideas, his spirit, they all become part of that collective wisdom that life carries forward. The beauty of the drawings, the longing in that phrase, "there shall be wings." These are life's persistent drive expressing itself through one of its individual organs. It's not just one man's dream. It's this deep human desire being nurtured, refined across generations, waiting for the right moment to finally break through. It shows how knowledge and purpose build up, step by step.
And then he mentions the resistance, too. Generations passed, and men said man would never fly, for it was not the will of God, which shows the intellectual roadblocks that collective purpose can face. And then finally, triumph. And then man flew, and the age-long challenge of the bird was answered. This is the ultimate proof of his theory, right? The undeniable fact that humanity achieved something that seemed impossible for thousands of years, defying physics, defying belief.
It is the concrete proof. It shows that the will of life, as Durant frames it, overcomes not just individual death, but also societal push.
And he wraps it all up with this truly profound conclusion. He says, life is that which can hold a purpose for 3,000 years and never yield. And then that contrast again. The individual fails, but life succeeds. The individual is foolish, but life holds in its blood and seed the wisdom of generations. And finally, the individual dies, but life, tireless and undiscourageable, goes on, wondering, longing, planning, trying, mounting, longing. That last line, wondering, longing, planning, trying, mounting, longing, it almost gives life a personality, a consciousness, doesn't it? It's not just a blind process, it's active, striving, yearning with its own goal.
It absolutely does. That ending passage might be the most poetic and powerful summary of his whole argument. Life isn't static, it's dynamic, active, striving, almost sentient, characterized by this endless curiosity, wondering, this innate desire for more, longing, this drive to build and achieve, planning, trying, mounting, and that constant aspiration, longing again. The repetition of longing really emphasizes this deep fundamental yearning that drives everything. It suggests that even when we fail as individuals, our efforts still feed into this immense collective wisdom and drive that ensures life ultimately wins. Our individual mistakes, our limited understanding, it all gets absorbed into the wisdom passed down through generations, held in life's very blood and seed. It's a truly grand, inspiring vision of purpose that stretches way beyond any single lifetime.
Okay, so we've covered the certainty of death, death's purpose for the whole, life strategies like parentage, and this long-term view. Now, Durant does something really powerful emotionally in the final section. He creates this incredibly poignant contrast. Let's talk about that. He brings us right back down to earth, doesn't he? With this stark, almost brutal picture of an individual dying. It serves as this crucial counterpoint to the big picture of life's triumph. He focuses first on the agony of the individual loss. Death wins. It's such a jarring shift back after those sweeping cosmic ideas.
He does, and it's absolutely deliberate and essential, I think. To really feel the power of life's victory, Durant makes sure we first feel the weight, the finality of individual death. He doesn't soft-pedal the pain. He describes an old man, right? He details his past strength. This arm once struck blows and fought for victory in virile games, and then the immense accumulation of his life. For 70 years, this man, with pain and effort, gathered knowledge. His brain became the storehouse of a varied experience. His heart, through suffering, learned a gentleness. 70 years he grew from an animal into a man capable of seeking truth and creating beauty.
It's such a complete portrait of a life lived, isn't it? 70 years of learning, growing, becoming refined, capable of truth and beauty, all that wisdom, experience, gentleness, built up over decades. And then the end, described in such raw, almost horrifying detail. But death is upon him, poisoning him, choking him, congealing his blood, gripping his heart, bursting his brain, rattling in his throat. Death wins. That death wins just lands like a punch to the gut. The imagery is so visceral, designed to make you feel the individual's end, make it totally real. It's shocking, that directness. A stark reminder of how brutal and final it can be for the person.
It is shocking.
Yeah.
And meant to be. Durant includes this passage, which seems to contradict everything he's been building, precisely because it raises the stakes. It makes the triumph of life that follows feel so much more powerful, so much more meaningful. He doesn't dismiss the sorrow of personal loss. He validates it completely. He makes sure his later celebration of life's victory isn't some shallow dismissal of individual suffering, but a profound understanding that actually includes it. It shows his intellectual honesty, I think, and his deep empathy for us, for the human condition. He acknowledges the individual tragedy, the reality of that extinguished life, before he pivots back to the wider, enduring view. It's a necessary step to really earn the conclusion he's aiming for.
But then, just as you're sitting with that individual agony, he immediately pivots, almost whiplash-inducing. He pulls you straight from the deathbed to this vibrant reaffirmation of life. It's a direct contrast. It just flips the emotional switch instantly. He pulls you outside that room, almost like the world outside is indifferent.
He does, instantly. He sweeps our attention outwards, beyond the dying room, to the world just teeming with life. Outside on the green boughs, birds twitter gaily, and Chanticleer sings his hymn to the sun. Light streams across the fields, buds open, and stalks confidently lift their heads. The sap mounds in the trees. The sensory details are key here, aren't they? The sounds, the light, the feeling of growth, sap rising. It all represents the ongoing, unbothered vitality of the world. A stark contrast to the silence and decay happening inside. Nature just carries on, indifferent to one person's end, continuing its relentless cycle of renewal. Its energy doesn't diminish. It's a powerful visual. Life's pulse just keeps beating, unaffected by the loss of a single cell.
And then the children, the perfect symbol of life's renewal. Here are children. What is it that makes them so joyous? Running madly over the dew-wet grass, laughing, calling, pursuing, eluding, panting for breath, inexhaustible. It's such a perfect image of pure, raw life force, full of energy that just seems to laugh in the face of decay. What energy, what spirit and happiness, what do they care about death? Their sheer exuberance feels like the direct answer to the old man's last breath.
The children are the ultimate living proof of life's renewal. And they tie back directly to that idea of parentage as life's strategy we talked about. They are the future. They are the fresh wave of vitality replacing what's gone. Their joy, their endless energy, it's the direct opposite of the weariness and end of old age. And they are unconcerned with death because, in a way, they are the force that makes death temporary in the bigger picture. Their life's next chapter, full of potential, carrying the torch genetic intellectual forward. They are the undeniable, tangible proof that life goes on, vibrant and purposeful.
And he connects their individual purpose back to that larger current, saying they will learn and grow and love and struggle and create and lift life up one little notch, perhaps, before they die. So our individual lives, even though they end, they contribute to the slow, incremental progress of life itself, and then that ultimate cheating of death again. And when they pass, they will cheat death with their children, with parental care that will make their children a little finer than themselves. It's that beautiful cycle again, the generational legacy, but with that little nudge towards improvement.
Yes, it brings back that generational cycle, but is driven not just by instinct, but by conscious parental care. It's not just about reproduction, it's about nurturing, teaching, preparing the next generation to contribute to life's story, and hopefully making them a little finer than themselves. This ensures life doesn't just continue, but ideally it gets better, refined. Each generation potentially builds on the last, adding to the collective wisdom, the collective striving. It ensures life's purpose is not just maintained, but maybe even advanced. It's quite an optimistic view of human potential, isn't it? Believing that through conscious effort, we can actually improve the body of life itself over time.
And then the final triumphant declaration, life wins. It's such a deliberate echo of the earlier death wins, but a direct, powerful contradiction. It feels like a final definitive statement. Thinking about that whole emotional ride Durant takes us on, he drags us down into the despair of individual death, the grim reality, only to lift us up to this profound, almost cosmic hope, all in just a few paragraphs. It's amazing, really. Masterful.
It is truly masterful. That emotional journey is absolutely central to making his argument land. By first letting us really feel the sting, the finality of individual death, he makes the later claim of life's triumph feel earned, not cheap. It's not a shallow optimism. It's an optimism that has looked suffering square in the face and integrated it. The death wins moment acknowledges our personal experience of grief, validates it. But the immediate life wins puts that experience into a much larger, more resilient, and ultimately victorious context. It's a powerful shift, intellectually and emotionally, reminding us that even as our individual stories end, we're part of an unending, triumphant narrative.
Okay, let's wrap this up. Hashtag outro. So we've journeyed through Durant's stark look at death's certainty, then his radical reframing of it as necessary for life's renewal. We talked about parentage as this immortal bridge and life's incredibly long game, its unyielding purpose seen through things like the dream of flight. His core message seems crystal clear: individual death, certain, often painful. But life itself, through having children, through collective purpose, through this unstoppable will life endlessly renews and ultimately triumphs. It's all about shifting focus, isn't it? From the temporary part to the deathless whole.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is how he doesn't deny death or try to explain it away. He recontextualizes it, puts it within this almost cosmic optimism. He takes something universally feared and turns it into a necessary, maybe even beautiful, part of a much larger, ongoing story. It's a profound reminder that our personal narrative, while incredibly important to us, is just one thread in this infinite tapestry that continues long after we're gone. This perspective really challenges us, doesn't it? To think beyond just our own achievements and consider how they fit into the bigger stream of human progress.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Does hearing Durant's perspective maybe change how you view your own fears about death? Or how you think about legacy? Or even just the meaning of being human, your place in it all? It's a pretty powerful framework. It suggests our individual struggles, our work, our joys, our sorrows. They all contribute to something much larger than just us. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. If life's ultimate victory really does rely on us, the individuals, being willing to pass on our vitality, our knowledge to contribute to that collective wisdom and striving, well, what kind of personal responsibility does that imply for how we live our lives and what we choose to leave behind? Not just maybe for our own kids, but for the collective life of humanity itself, for that ongoing dream of progress and renewal he talks about. Something to think about.